welcome to the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And today's show is one golden nugget which captures the life of a British and global businessman, entrepreneur, plus a cricket umpire at the highest level, bringing both business and sport together as a perfect and established partnership. A career spanning more than 40 years, he has established himself as a dynamic entrepreneur and leader in the business development and trade brokerage sectors. Renowned for his ability to unlock hidden potential in business, he has been instrumental in building companies towards sustainable growth and successful exits. Yes, folks, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome on the show John Attridge. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Russell, and it's my pleasure to be here. I even, got the right colours for your book and whatnot, so I thought that might blend in and be part of the show.
Always good to see orange. It's my branding, as you know, Johnson. Great stuff wearing the orange today. It's superb. So I'll tell you what, let's start at the very beginning, John. Your journey into the business world began in Australia, of course, your homeland, where you laid a strong academic foundation at La Trobe University, studying economics, politics, mathematics, and English. What a tremendous start in life. So please tell us more about these early university days, John.
Yeah, well, I had to include English in that because I didn't know later in my life I'd actually moved to England, and it became a useful language to have over here too. So when people ask, am I multilingual? Yes, I can speak Australian and English, but I did do economics based on, I loved economics at high school, and my teacher was a brilliant guy, loved this topic, and then it became a natural segue after I completed my year, year 12 here, went to university, and people asked me why was I studying economics, and I said I got no idea. I just liked the subject, and little was it known that it was absolutely useless for the first 13 years of my career, but it became very obvious during the period. So it's quite often interesting when you start with something. It might not be clear at the time that you did it, but it certainly has become vital as life has progressed.
Yes, indeed. That's really worked for your life today, that's for sure. There's no doubt about that. Your professional journey commenced in 1976 with MLC Life Limited, I understand, one of Australia's largest life insurance companies. You began as a commission-only sales agent, a role that would set the stage for your future success. Now, there must be some interesting stories, John, here, and moments that you can share with us, John. It must be, surely.
It was an interesting thing when I took a segue or took a break out of university. I had to do something. My dad was a dairy farmer, and I couldn't sit there doing nothing as you do. So they went off to America for a couple of months.
Nice.
So my dad had a saying that says, "Nothing like with endurance, like the man who sells insurance," and he was very much against it as a concept. So I was working for Coca-Cola at the time. Not the MD, but I was mending pallets and working on the bottle washing machine, having come out of university, and just picked up something that I got along with. I quickly realised that corporate life wasn't for me. I'm only joking. So I went along to the local dole office and said, "What's on?" And the guy said, "Well, we've got absolutely nothing." And I said, "What do you mean nothing?" He said, "No, there's," I said, "But, university, no, it doesn't matter. There's no jobs about." And I was walking out the door and I saw this thing says, "Wanted, life insurance rep, MLC Life." So I got it off the wall, took it back to him and said, "What do you mean there's nothing? What's this?" And he said, "Oh, that's commission only. You don't want to do that." And I said, "What's commission only mean?" He said, "You only get paid when you sell stuff." And I said, "What if you sell a lot of stuff?" And here was this little guy, and I'm throughout everybody that's got glasses and that's very slimly built, which is not me, but this little weedy guy with glasses that was a career advisor, as some of them are in the public service, probably cemented my skepticism and doubting as to 82% of the people who work in the public service, but that's another issue. And so anyway, I just bowled up, got the job, started Monday. And within 5 months, I was earning more than my dad, who was operating a dairy farm. Now, my only regret, people ask me, "John, have you got regrets in life?" There's only one regret, is that I didn't go back to that guy and wave my commission check in his face, because
Yes,
that's probably more
indeed.
money than he'd earned in 10 years. And
Mm.
but anyway, that was a side story. So that's how I ended up at MLC Life.
Oh, that's a fantastic story, though, isn't it? I mean, that's really, really, really brilliant in some ways. You noticed a job on the wall that he wasn't prepared to offer you, and there you were, earning more money than your father could ever see after a few months. That's just brilliant. But also, MLC Life, your natural talent for sales and leadership quickly became apparent. And by 1979, you had been promoted to superintendent of a regional team. And this was at just 23 years old. I mean, that's just amazing. You were the youngest person in the company's 100-year history to hold such a position. Wow. I mean, that's some achievement, John, isn't it? You must be proud of yourself. And your
Yeah, so
dad, he must be proud.
yeah, I think eventually he came around. But yeah, it was. It just became something. No one ever teaches you at school anything to do with sales. And if I've got one
Mm,
thing that I'd like to do uh, left on my radar, be love to open up a university section of some kind that taught people, budding entrepreneurs and people coming through the education system, on
yes.
the better ways to run business, and including that in sales, because every business relies on sales, and yet one of the reasons that most businesses fail is a lack of sales. So
Exactly.
um, yeah, so I got promoted and I had a natural affinity. I don't think MLC training was great. They had a lot
Mm,
of fantastic people that came along, that over the course of the years that I've actually caught up with in later life. People like Dr. Feelgood, Phil Jauncey. He was the
wow.
first sports psychologist, um, when no one ever even thought, what was that? Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, fascinating guy. And I've known him for 40 odd years. And I actually interviewed him on my quantum show during COVID. So people like Brian Tracy, who most people will have heard of, who's
Mm,
just a sales guru, the writer of Eat That Frog, the book. Um, yeah, what a magnificent guy. And through MLC, they brought internationally renowned people through the system. Dr. Alan Peace, who I became a personal friend of during my time at the Life Underwriters Association, because as I was rising through the MLC ranks, he
mm,
was my equivalent at National Mutual. So there's a guy that's written, I don't know, 40 million books and or sold 40 million books, and on
wow.
the body language guru. And these were all people that I met through MLC Life. So they had very good sales structured training. Um, and, that I became good at, I enjoyed doing.
Mm,
And that then morphed into sales management by recruiting, mentoring, maintaining, motivating a team of guys. And I took
mm,
over a region that was downtrodden in New South Wales. It was, I think, MLC at the time had something like 120 branches, and it was the bottom 20. And by the time I left that branch 3, 4 years later, it was in the top three.
mm. And
So
that's incredible, really, isn't it, John? Because this all happened in 1985, and your career took another significant leap, as you just suggested, when you were appointed as the state sales manager of the New South Wales Southern region, and you were leading a team of 700 to 850 representatives. So it's quite a large team. You were responsible for driving the region's sales growth, a challenge you met with characteristic determination and strategic insight. And I know you, John, so this is absolutely true. Your leadership during this period solidified your reputation as a rising star in the business world. So there was no holding you back, John, was there? You grabbed it with every opportunity, took every opportunity you could. That's incredible.
and I got put through some very good management training systems by MLC,
Mm,
because at that time MLC got bought out by Lend Lease Corporation,
okay.
and they were this massive company. MLC, Lend Lease, their
Yes.
sidearms built Wembley, that sort of stuff. They got a building and
Wow.
construction side, and it was just a massive corporate. The
Mm,
downside to all that, it lost the family feel that MLC had been, 100-year odd company,
mm,
old years, and they used to have foundation dinners and all sorts of things, and you felt part of the furniture and part of the family, and
yes.
and I got a taste of corporate life and corporate training at the big end of town, and to be honest, it wasn't me. And so
Right.
about that time, I'd peaked in what I was doing. I didn't have anything else to prove. I really didn't have anywhere else to go other than a change of focus and becoming part of the senior corporate management team at a massive
Mm.
company. And to be honest, and I've had a little experience with that afterwards at Microsoft years later, and both of those experiences didn't engender me to liking corporate life. Too much backstabbing,
Oh,
bum covering,
oh, too much. Yeah.
CCing with emails and all sorts of different things just to justify what you were doing. And, that dog eat dog world, it just
Mm.
wasn't me. I love small business. I love the structure of creative business. And
Mm.
so at that time, I was on the lookout for something different. And I'm sure you're going to ask about that as it comes
I'm
along.
certainly am. Yeah. I mean, so let's look at because this leads into your entrepreneurial side of your world. So let's look at the entrepreneurial leap in your business life. Your success in the corporate world drove your entrepreneurial spirit to explore new opportunities, as you're just suggesting. So in 1988, you made the bold decision to co-found Trade Limited, a venture that would redefine trade and business sectors. Alongside two other directors, you built Trade Limited into one of the largest independently owned trade exchanges globally, recognized by the International Reciprocal Trade Association, or short term known as IRTA. So please educate us all here, John, on this amazing start in your entrepreneurial campaign. It's a fantastic story.
Yeah, so there's a little bit that missed out in that, and that's I had played football in Australian football, real
Ah,
football I used
nice.
to call it, and cricket in Goulburn. And a guy that I'd played both football and cricket with had moved to the Gold Coast in Queensland and started a
Mm.
car rental business. So
Ah.
I'd gone there as part of the Life Underwriters Association convention on the Gold Coast, met David, saw the lifestyle that he was leading. Instead of suit and tie, he was in a pair of shorts and,
Oh, way
getting
to
in
go.
early in the morning, washing cars, sending them out, bringing them back at the end of the day and watching all this happen. And I thought, we had World Expo in Brisbane coming up in 88. And so we kicked off West Rent Mazda car rentals. And so,
Mm.
we had loads of relationships with Mazda Australia, brought brand new uh, Mazdas on lease at, a very modest 17% interest rates back in the day.
Mm.
It, excuse me, it's another, people moan about 4 and 5 and 6%, but try 17 and work to that. But we just didn't know
Mm.
any different. So during Expo, we had the 6 months of Expo and World Expo, two months either side, and we had over 100% occupancy on these cars. And
Incredible.
we made literally more money than you could spend. And my dad, who owned the farm, had sold the farm at that point, travelled up to the Gold Coast and just shook his head as to what was happening. And how was this so easy that you could make money faster that you couldn't even spend it? That's absolutely true. And
Mm.
then a year later, every commercial pilot in Australia decided to go on strike. Little did we know at the time, but that went on for 5 months. And so we went from hero to zero within 14 days. So from 100 and odd percent occupancy to zero. And yet we
Oh.
still had all the overhead of paying Mazda, the lease company, the wages, the rents. And so this thing that I'd seen in America
Mm.
saved us because we formed a trading group. Uh, because a little bit like COVID, you can't see that coming, you can't plan for it. And it took the then Prime Minister, Bob Hawke, uh, the threat 5 months later, 5.5 months later, that if these pilots didn't get back to work come Monday, he'd take away their commercial pilot's license. And true to his word, about 50% of the total pilots in Australia, to my knowledge, have never, ever flown a commercial aircraft over Australian airspace. So
Wow.
and that broke the strike. He really came in, and he was a trade union guy, and then
Yes.
became the prime minister. He was
That's a big
famously
hit,
known
isn't it?
for the fastest yard glass at Oxford University, but he was a bit of a
Incredible.
knockabout guy. Should have been a Chelsea fan, but anyway, that's another thing.
Yes. Wow, it's another story.
Um, So anyway, he broke the strike, but it took 5.5 months. And if we hadn't have adopted this strategy of the trading group, we would have been dead in the water because we would have had no options, no revenue coming in. We wouldn't have had enough money. The money we made during Expo would have run out, and we would have failed as a business before we even virtually got off the ground. But because of the exchange, we were able to develop a very strong business, Trade Limited, as you point out, which we then sold about a decade later. And that was my first 8-figure exit from business. And not just all mine, but with 2 other partners, as you point out. And that was a mixture of cash, scrip, and equity in a new company. So we did a trade sale at that point. In the meantime, we'd already sold the West Rent car rental business for a nice little figure. Probably one of our mistakes in business too, we decided on a Friday that the trade exchange was going so well that we should ditch the car rental that had been our crutch all this time. This is in about 92. And we decided on a figure, put it in the paper and sold it and walked away with the money Monday. So that told me we sold that too cheap, but you live and learn. But that's where we got to.
You certainly do. And of course, a little bit more about Trade Limited. Your leadership at Trade Limited was marked by your commitment to ethical business practices and education. And again, knowing you, John, I can see this absolutely falls into your lap quite nicely. So much so that you served as the worldwide governor of the IRTA Ethics Committee, and you were a member of the Certified Broker Panel, which regulated global industry, educational standards. I mean, your efforts helped elevate Trade Limited's standing in the industry, making it a trusted partner for business literally around the world. I mean, this is some achievement what you did with Trade Limited, isn't it, John? Before you sold it, of course.
So we started with 50 businesses under crisis, and then about 13 years later had the exit into a bigger company that was one of our, well, we call it a competitor, but I always like to collaborate rather than compete because ignorance of what you do was our biggest competitor by a long shot. And so part of that exit was a strong foundation with IRTA. That was our industry group. I'd had strong connections to the Life Underwriters Association when I was with MLC, and I carried that forward into the same concept with the IRTA, and I still do today. I was there a week ago at the last convention in Las Vegas, speaking on a couple of topics in front of my peers and fellow owners of exchanges. And I think that was my 21st, 22nd attendance at these conventions. And we calculated at the time, I think I've spent more money bringing me and associates and colleagues to these events than just about any other person in the world, mainly because we have to travel from wherever we are to America, because that's where mostly they're held, America or the Caribbean.
That's an amazing story, isn't it, really? Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, really, there's no end to your business talents, John, as you also co-owned and directed several other successful ventures, including the West Rent Mazda car rentals, which you've already discussed, and Trade Print, a lithographic print company as well. I mean, West Rent Mazda, located, as you said, on the Australia's Gold Coast, catered to the booming tourist market, as you previously mentioned. And under your leadership, the company flourished, as you said, further demonstrating your versatility and business acumen. A very busy and successful time, John. So what about lithographic print company? How did that one pan out?
Yeah, so we picked that up as a bad debt. Interesting story that they owed us quite a bit of money, and like lots of businesses, you know, the previous owner was a good printer and was passionate about printing, knew 202 run strong, what colour that looked like, you know, who does that? So he had all this knowledge about printing, but he had no idea on accounting, he had no idea on finance, no idea on legal, planning, marketing, sales. It was all cross your fingers and hope that you run and that's a common denominator in so many businesses even today.
I
and
believe
so,
you, yes.
you know, I write in my best-selling book, Russell, you know, there's 3 fundamentals that every business I've ever owned, I've applied. One is Stephen R. Covey's 2nd habit of highly effective people. And one of those is starting with the end in mind. because most people put more effort into planning their holiday than they do their business. And
Yes.
Even today, and as you know, I'm a fairly in-demand speaker around the place, and
Yes.
people come up to me afterwards and say, John, what's the biggest mistake small business makes? And I said, they don't start with the end in mind. They just decide on opening a business and cross their fingers and hope it works. And it is so true. The
It
second
is.
thing is I apply the 80-20 rule, so concentrating 80% of my efforts towards the top 20% of things that create 80% of my income. And then the third thing, which is the basis for the trade exchange, is to capture money, monetize, identify, and do something with the spare capacity, which is usually the biggest hidden asset in every single business that people are blissfully unaware of. They're fantastic at looking at their management accounts every month, their P&L and balance sheet. When you ask them about their spare capacity opportunity, they just look at you as if you're from Mars. So what my point being is that when we saw that print business, we saw great operator, just a poor business person. So we came in, paid up all the debt, restructured the business, left that person as the managing director and the guy that actually did the printing, put some proper sales processes around the thing, did some proper marketing, some planning, and all of a sudden, that became a booming business, not the wreck that it previously was. And then the same thing happened with the Queensland Post Sports Edition, which was a weekly newspaper. Because I loved sport, I recruited a couple of guys that loved cricket, loved golf, loved football, what have you, that were my mates. They became the journos and the guys out schmoozing and ticketing because they loved what they did. They played at my cricket club. So it gave them something to do. We used the print company to do the printing for the thing. Those boys to get out and cover the events. And every week we had this newspaper running around tabloid form that was providing, news and insights and stories into the sporting world, which, as you know, in Australia is pretty vibrant.
Oh,
And
indeed.
so, again, that was using the same principles as what I've applied to every business I've run, but just structured it so that it was done properly, and then get great people around me to do the .I cross T stuff.
Absolutely. So more John Attridge success stories, and of course, all in Australia. But let's talk about expanding your horizons a little here. In the early 2000s, you expanded your influence by moving to the United Kingdom. So the English will come in handy now that you did earlier in your university days, where you continue to apply your business acumen on a global scale. One of your notable roles during this period was as a consultant for Bartercard. I think I've got that right, Bartercard, a company specializing in trade exchanges. Known for your ability to fix stuff that no one else can, which you've just kind of been talking about in some ways with the lithographic setup, you became an invaluable asset applying your expertise in sales systems, management, franchising, licensing, training, and marketing. I mean, very impressive, John, isn't it? I mean, please tell us more about your first business venture in the United Kingdom.
Yeah,
Successful, I'm sure.
so after, as I said, when we exited Trade Limited, I took a chunk of that exit price in stock in Bartercard, and I was then commissioned on a 3-year deal to come to the United Kingdom and open up the operation here, which we successfully did. And in 3 years, we'd expanded it to about 5,000 customers, trading about £5 million a month in additional capacity. So moving the business forward. But the key thing in all of that was the very first day I got here, I met my current wife. And
Oh,
so
tremendous.
what we did with Bartercard, we moved that on, and I was part of the process that we ended up listing that on the second board of the AIM here in London, and that was a 34 million pound or $34 million exit. At that time, I owned the front doormat, of course, as part of the deal that I'd done previously. But that allowed in 2012, 2013, I sold out, and then I had a hiatus out of the industry for about 12 months, where I went off to work back in corporate with Microsoft, which was the second worst mistake I ever made. It was on good money, silly money really, but my only mistake there was not taking a percentage of the uplift, because what I was responsible for was in the process of recruiting 2,800 call centre staff speaking 22 languages in 4 centres to field the 30-day free trial initiatives for Office 365, Windows Intune and CRM Online. And we were doing about 36,000 of those a day, BANT qualifying them and turning them into qualified leads to pass to the Microsoft Partner Network. So that taught me a lot of things. Back in the bum covering and the brown nosing and the CCing with emails by that time. And that was a toxic environment. I really hated every day of being there and couldn't wait to get out. So,
I mean, just so as everybody understands, I mean, your global influence grew further when you took on this role, and it was a global head of training and quality for the Microsoft division at Rainmaker, I think in 2012. I think it's called Rainmaker. And as you say, in this position, you led the team responsible for implementing Microsoft's Click to Chat, 30-day free trial response initiatives for products like Windows 8, Office 365, Office 365, I should say, Windows Intune and CRM Online, further elevating your reputation as a global business leader with a keen understanding of technology now as well and customer service. Now, this does sound like an interesting venture, John, although you say working for that organisation, you loathed it because it was very much the CC, everybody on emails, BCC, covering your shirt tails. But it's a learning curve, isn't it? It's something you grasped and got on with and made happen.
It reminded me of the latter days of MLC when Lend-Lease had taken over, and it reminded me that corporate life was certainly not my bag of fruit.
Yeah,
and
absolutely right.
And you look at even today, many people retire not retire, but they get made redundant from a mid-manager's role at a massive company. And then they think, oh, I'll just go out and run a business without a salary. And they find out what that really means. And 6 months later, they're out of business. So that's another story.
Here's another story completely. Yeah, the people that work for these corporations, in these nice, comfortable roles, could never do what you do as an entrepreneur, could they, John? They just haven't got the backbone, the knowledge, the thought process to even get there.
I don't think they got the mindset because a fat salary creates a hammock.
Yeah, it does.
Not a safety net.
Quite right indeed. That's quite nicely put. I like that. A hammock. Absolutely. Just lie down, fall asleep, and just carry on with life as it is until it all ends, as you say, and then they're stuck.
Someone decide a new CEO comes along and all of a sudden cuts 7,000 jobs. Do you think, what the hell were those guys doing prior to,
exactly.
I can cut 7,000 and not notice. So hang on, what were they doing?
Exactly right. You're so right. And it happens very readily in business, doesn't it, today? It happens more often than you think, actually, to be fair. More often than you think.
It could apply to the public service. Again, this is another issue, but it's my thought that you could probably get rid of 82% of the entire public service and not notice.
You probably could, actually. You probably could. And having worked in the public sector myself as a consultant, particularly driving, for example, I did work at the Home Office as an interim head of cybersecurity for the whole of the Home Office and also policing division as well. And you walk around, you see these people, and you think, what do they actually do? It's a mystery.
So you can't do without nurses, doctors, teachers, all that. So I'm not saying that side of the public service. I'm saying
that's different.
The pen pushers that are in Whitehall and wherever else working from home, they're the lot that I look at and just shake my head and think, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly right. And of course, they're burning money. They're burning the public purse, and that's the trouble.
I think Terry Packer, the Australian billionaire, was questioned by the Senate at one point. He said, and he was accused by a senator of avoiding tax. And he's sitting there stirring a cup of tea saying, I do everything I possibly can to minimise my tax. He said,
absolutely right.
He said, you'd be a complete moron if you paid more extra rather than what's obligated, because until you as a government demonstrate to me that you become more efficient in spending it, why will I donate extra? A classic line.
A classic line indeed. And as we all know, tax avoidance is legal. Tax evasion is illegal. So tax evasion takes you to prison. Tax avoidance doesn't. It just means you've got more money in your pocket. I mean, everybody
you've got an absolute duty as a business person to legally minimise your obligation, in my opinion.
Correct. Correct. And that's actually operating as a proper official as an owner of a company, isn't it? You've got to do
And you
that.
need vision in order to do that.
You
You
do.
know,
Yeah,
if you're a technical company and you're innovating, then take advantage of things like R&D. You know,
exactly.
you'll get a payment that wouldn't have otherwise been there. It's sitting there ready for you. You know, just be aware of what's available and take advantage of what is available.
Exactly. Take it with open hands. Absolutely right. And we've had these conversations, I know, before in other business discussions we've had, John. But now let's switch from business ventures for a moment and look at your passion for cricket. I told you, we've got to get on to sport, haven't we? Let's be honest. You also pursued a long life passion for cricket. Your love for the sport led you to become a qualified umpire with the England and Wales Cricket Board, the ECB, in 2001. Over the course of your 14-year career as an umpire, you officiated in numerous high profile matches, including the MCCA 4-day championship final and the National 2020 televised final as well. So please tell us more about your love for cricket, John, and what drove you to become a high-profile cricket umpire.
I think it crosses over into business as well. And
Mm,
people in sport, generally speaking, one of the things I look for in recruitment, particularly in sales and account management, is a
mm,
competitive nature.
yes.
So I want to recruit a team of people like I did with MLC back in the day, that
Mm,
they weren't fighting each other, but they were certainly looking at leaderboards. So everywhere you go in my organisations, there's bells when you do a deal, there's a leaderboard thing, there's an end of month finish, all the environment around getting the best result out of the team possible for the
yes, indeed.
customer, for the team member, and of course then for the company. You know,
Mm,
it's a win-win for everybody. And you know, cricket was part of that. I really enjoyed cricket. You know, I captained cricket teams and was part of seniors teams for 20 years. And um, oddly enough, it wasn't. I didn't start my career umpiring in England. It was in the late 90s in Australia.
okay.
And a funny story, I was getting to the point. I think I was 41 and being called granddad all the time for playing as a frustrated left arm orthodox spinner that used to come around the wicket, pitch it in line, and it's going to take middle stump, LB every time, and umpires back in the day before all the technology we have, not out, not out, missing leg, missing leg.
Mm,
Now, I would have been the greatest wicket taker of all time had technology been around when I was
interesting
bowling.
story.
I'm just,
Yes.
I'm just amplifying that just for the sake of it. As you get older, that you know your
Mm,
success gets better, doesn't it?
it does
Um,
indeed, yeah.
But you know, I was always frustrated with the fact that you know how was this not out, and that so one day I really did my nut and you know regretfully let the umpire know that his parents weren't married when he was born, and all sorts of other things, and I got suspended. And
Wow.
I thought I'm getting to the point where you know I'm getting old and slow and in the field. My bowling was still as good as ever, but you know I didn't ever like batting that much, and
Mm.
fielding was just a chore. So I thought maybe it's the time to retire because part of my penalty was that I had to do an umpiring course.
Oh, wow.
So I did an umpiring course, uh, oddly enough, with the guy that owned the printing company that I was talking about because he was a cricketer as
Yes.
well. Bloke called Bruce Oxenford that most people that are into cricket will have heard of. He went on to become a absolute elite test umpire.
Mm,
Um, and enjoyed the umpiring in the first year. I did okay. I got the third grade grand final, and thought, you know, because in Australia you get appointed according to merit. There's a system and rewards,
mm,
and umpires get trophies and all sorts of things. That doesn't happen here, but that's another story. And the second year I did it, I got the semi final of the A grade, which
wow.
included my club playing in that game. And that raised a lot of eyebrows at the time, but I managed to get through that. And at that time, I moved here to the UK, got on the board for the Hertfordshire League,
Mm,
which is where I'd played as a player over the years. Um, Came here and had a season at Harpenden up in Hertfordshire.
mm-hmm.
Enjoyed that immensely. Had a umpire a season there. Got moved up through the grades into the first grade, and then the system, and then all of a sudden in 2000 and I'm going to say three, maybe four, they then got this national panel thing going, and I got appointed to go on that. And then I spent 14 years up until the end of just before COVID.
Yes.
But unfortunately, I'd never played a first-class cricket game. And when it got to 2018-19, I was standing alongside current umpires, who I won't name, that have retired from first-class cricket, come along in their first games standing at my level that I'd had 500 games doing, and good marks and whatnot. They came whizzing through the grades because by that time I was 60 odd and they were 30 and whatnot. So I've stood with people like Rob Bailey and Richard Kettleborough, and Richard was probably recognised as the best in the world there at one point.
Absolutely, yes.
But most of these guys coming through were all first class players, and they'd experienced first class. And a little bit like I've always questioned why football's not the same, is that everyone moans about the ref, and most of the refs have never played at any decent level.
They haven't. You're right.
And you wouldn't expect a ex-first Premier League player, because they've probably got too much money to worry about accepting the money to be a ref. But why not the National League guys that were semi-pro or pro? Surely there's a system that could be adopted where some of them that know the game, that played the game, and that's why I got respect as an umpire, is that I'd been through and I'd played it at a half decent level and interpreted it, knew what we were doing, and worked with the players. And I think man management played a big part in that. Yes, you know the rules, that should be a given. Yes, you know where to stand. Yes, you know all the bits and bobs, but how to manage a game, how to see blow-ups coming and how to avoid them, that was part of the skill, I think, that got me through to probably the best level that I could have been, having played the standard of cricket that I had played. So all good things come to an end, and my wife said one day COVID came along and we thought that was a good idea, and to be brutally honest, I haven't missed it. So
okay, that's fair enough. And you love cricket so much as well. I mean, let's be honest, you umpired at county level, didn't you? Let's be honest. Umpiring in various formats of the game, officiating as recently as 2018, just before COVID, and to name a few matches. They were second-class matches, but still good level. Hertfordshire versus Wiltshire, Berkshire versus Shropshire, Cornwall versus Devon. Oh, feisty affair, that one, I'm sure. I mean, there must be some great stories there about these amazing cricket journeys that you've had. Literally umpiring at that county level. It's a fantastic role you had there. I mean, you did very well.
I remember Cornwall versus Devon was always a bit of a thing beyond what side you jam and cream you put together. There was these rowdy Devon supporters that turn up at every Devon game drinking cider, copious, all day. And they'd sit on the sidelines and go, D-E-V-N Devon. And you think, hang on, missing some letters here. But it sort of had a ring to it, and the players just went along with it. But there was plenty of banter going backwards and forwards. I think one of the highlights I did actually the 4-day final, where Cornwall won their first ever 4-day county championship, playing Berkshire, and I was one of the umpires that was there with Jeff Callaway, another Aussie guy.
Yes.
And the other guy that was supposed to be that is Donovan Cock, the South African, and he's moved on and he's now on the elite panel in Australia.
Wow.
So there's some good form to that sort of stuff. But it was Cornwall's first ever win in the championship, a great 4-day event, some very good, good mixture of young guys coming through, old pros that are, there's a guy played a test for Pakistan and all that sort of stuff, but he was very cagey as a bowler and decent fella. So you meet so many nice people, Russell. And this is back in the day where, when I was a player, I always had a beer after the game with the oppo. This one even, you'd have a beer or two, but, as life's gone on, and then from my observations past COVID, it's certainly not the family and the entertainment that it once was. I think with social media and everything, I don't think that the guys have the same camaraderie as what we used to back in the day.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I've had some great cricket people on my show, actually. Ashley Giles was on last year, for example, first class
I'll tell you, just
player.
a quick one. So
yes,
I was up in the parks in Oxford, and
oh wow,
I'm always amazed by, the English tradition in cricket, the ho, ho, ho and all that sort of stuff. And I was umpiring with a guy called Don Brooks,
Oh, yes.
whose son is Jack, who played for Oxfordshire, then went on to Somerset, and then very successful career at Yorkshire.
Yes.
Great guy, got his own cricket academy now. So I was with his dad, and we're in day 2 of this game, and it was Oxfordshire Blues playing Warwickshire. And Ashley Giles was one of the coaches of Warwickshire. So
yeah, he was.
Day 2, there's been a fatality on the A34, and Don's late to the game by about 45 minutes. So I'm at one end doing both, and we've had Ashley Giles and this Alan Donald, the ex-South African fast bowler, alternating at square leg. So when Brooksy turns up, I say, yeah, there you go, Brooksy. You're more important than 2 ex-first class and test players put together.
Good story. That's a wonderful story. I mean, Ashley Giles was great on the show. I mean, obviously, he won the Ashes in 2005 for England against Australia.
We don't talk about that, but anyway.
You don't talk about that one very much. I know, John, that's something you're going to dislike, I think, being discussed. And of course, we got the Ashes series later on this year in December and January, haven't we, over in Australia? So that's an interesting one. But I've also had, for example, the cricket or the sport and business side of things. I've had Colin Graves, the chairman, CEO of Yorkshire County Cricket Club, on the show, and also Sean Jarvis, who mixed his cricket and his football and his business acumen as CEO of Leicestershire County Cricket Club. So there's been a bit of a cricket format really going on the show here, which is great to see. And now yourself, you're joining the Cricket Business Club. It's wonderful. That's what I like to see. You also played for Woodham Mortimer Cricket Club's second 11. As both batsman and bowler. I mean, please tell us more about those playing days, because it's second 11. I'm sure you were probably a little bit older at that point. And did you enjoy that?
Well, I don't know. I don't remember actually that one, but I did play for the 40 Club, which is Don Bradman's thing. And
even better.
And even though I wasn't 40 at the time. And we played this school in Bury St Edmunds.
Yes.
And it was very ho, ho, ho. And I'm fielding it silly mid-on. And we've got our slow left-arm bowler at the other end. And this guy just leans forward and pops one up to me. I just put it in my pocket, say, how's that? And not expecting anything, just mucking around. Next thing I turn around, he's on his bike. Anyway, I think that's pretty weird. What went on there? Anyway, caught up with him at lunch, and I said, what's going on? He said, oh, yeah, I felt a little tickle onto the inside of the pad, and when you appealed, I thought I must have hit it, so I walked. And I just said to him, son, make sure you revisit that in the future, otherwise you'll be on the wrong end of too many decisions. But in Australia, that would have never happened. Nobody walked at the time. So
I think that's more of an English thing, wasn't it? That sort of gentlemanship around cricket. If you know you're out, you walk. I mean, it's more of an English honesty factoring. But I don't
it's
think
not
the
honesty.
English team
The
does
Australian
it now.
perspective is the guy in the white coat, was white coat at the other end.
Puts his finger up or he doesn't.
He's there to make a decision. You don't have to make one for him.
Exactly right.
And I'd prefer that, because I knew in Australia I had to make a decision. When I was umpiring there, I had to make the decision, right?
Exactly.
Here in England, half walked and half didn't, and you didn't know who was who. And so, it just made life very more confusing. If I had my choice, I'd umpire where nobody walked.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, wait for that umpire's finger to go up, as you would have done if you thought someone was out. And if it didn't go up, you stayed at the crease. It's as simple as that, isn't it? I know the Australians were good at doing a lot of that, so but it was more of a British thing. But there we go, an English thing, I should say, rather than British.
Maybe in the olden days, not so much today.
Oh, I don't think it happens today, John. I think that they've wised up now.
And you've got technology now. That's one of the best things that's ever happened. Is it makes the umpire make a decision one way or another. You've got umpire's call that allows a little bit of latitude. I think that has been the most brilliant innovation in the last
I agree
100 years.
I agree completely. I mean, it's happened in tennis, cricket. It's happened in many sports now. Football to some degree, with the controversy of the VAR structure. But it's happening across sports, and quite rightly so, I think, too.
All football need to do is get their act together
Yeah.
on some consistency with the people that are operating the VAR. You don't have that same
Oh,
issue in cricket. It is black or
no,
it's
you
white.
don't.
Yeah.
And of course, it's also the same in rugby. Rugby's pretty straightforward as well. I mean, they should adopt some of the rugby rules, really, to be honest, in football here or globally, because it would work better. It simply would.
Yep.
But as we know, business and sport do go hand in hand as great partners, John. And the news heading, and I'll read this out, umpires hit the six by new kit sponsorship deal, typifies this in many ways. You gave a maximum to Bournemouth-based BBX UK, who we'll come back onto later on. We won't talk about BBX just yet. A leading international business brokerage who have supplied a brand now, a new set of shirts and jackets for the South Coast panel of cricket officials who stand in Southern Premier and Hampshire League matches each weekend in a 3-year sponsorship deal. I mean, this sounds like a great sponsorship deal, John, doesn't it? Really? I mean, congratulations for doing this.
That
It's
was
wonderful.
using the concept of spare capacity, using the
Mm,
trade exchange mechanism.
yes.
And so we were able to go to a supplier in Cornwall, oddly enough, bought all the kit, got all the stuff laid out, and then provided that in return for exposure for the league. So it saved the league. Can't remember the exact number. It was about 6 or 10 grand or something.
Mm,
And, which is hard to find. A lot of grassroots sports clubs are struggling to find
they are.
um, sponsorship. So instead of having to pay out pounds sterling, we got a sponsor to come along and buy the kit. They got what they wanted,
Yeah.
and everybody was happy.
Good deal. Absolutely perfect. No, I think that's perfect. And I think that's the great combination of business and sport together. I think you did a really nice move there. And now this moves us on nicely to building BBX UK, a new chapter in business leadership, and of course, your current business venture. In 2014, you founded BBX UK, an international business community designed to help business owners unlock their full potential by selling unsold time and products. I know you briefly mentioned this earlier on, so it's a perfect timing this. As the founder and CEO, you have been at the forefront of helping businesses maximize their spare capacity, a hidden asset that many companies overlook. Again, you mentioned it earlier. BBX UK offers a unique platform to help companies find hidden treasure. So please tell us more about this exciting BBX UK platform and business venture. I know you're global now as well, John. So tell us more about BBX UK. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
So after I finished my exclusion period, having exited Microsoft, I
Mm,
got a thing on LinkedIn, which I subscribe to quite well, and I know you do too,
mm.
uh, from the founder of BBX, because that began in 1993 in Australia. And
Wow.
we had worked together when I was in Queensland and they were in Sydney and Adelaide. And so I'd helped develop that brand from day one, many years beforehand. And when Michael, the founder, realised that I was free from incumbent
Mm,
in our space, he got hold of me. I got down to Sydney and spent a week down there. We'd nutted out a deal, and I began the brand here in the UK, and that was 12 years ago. Um, and that's the one we're back on track now for another 8-figure exit in the next 3 to 5 years. So using the same concept as what we started back on the Gold Coast with back in the pilot strike times, but
mm,
having worked with the business for 20 odd years, putting in place a lot of things that had I known when I started, I would have done from day one. So it was an opportunity to start with a clean slate using the mechanism, and the mechanism works absolutely brilliantly, but
mm.
it's like an F1 car. You can have Max Verstappen driving it or Miss Daisy. Uh,
Yes.
or crazy David who runs it off the track all the time. So it's not
Mm,
the mechanism's fault, it's who's behind the wheel. So what we learned through experience was how to drive the car better, faster, more efficiently. And that's what we brought to the table when we opened BBX 12 years ago. So that's expanded out now. That brand is now directly in 12 countries, and we have tens of thousands of business owners, not 50 when we started all these years ago. And through the International Reciprocal Trade Association,
mm,
there's about 480,000 that participate in one form or another through the community. The net result
mm.
is you can sell and monetize some spare capacity here in the UK, obtain a digital credit held in your own PayPal type bank account, and then you can spend that anywhere globally.
Absolutely. And of course, BBX is a true global product now, isn't it, as a company, as an organization? I mean, I just missed out on some business with you just last year because you moved the payroll out to your Singapore operation, BBX. And I just got to you too late, I think. But there we are. That's life. That's one of those things in life that you just have to experience and move on from. But your wealth of experience and insights have also led you to become a best-selling author and sought after keynote speaker. Brilliant. Your book, Business Blunders and Bloody Great Ideas, is very Australian, that isn't it? I love it, has garnered acclaim in multiple countries, providing practical advice and strategies for small business owners aiming to navigate the complex world of entrepreneurship. Now, that must be very satisfying, John, a writer and a keynote speaker. I mean, please tell us more. You must enjoy that. That's fun, isn't it?
I love it nowadays.
Yeah.
I'm at events just about every month.
Yes, I've
In the
noticed.
last 12 months, I've spoken throughout the world, including
Mm,
the USA and Australia, and here in the UK, of course. So I think I'm a keynote speaker that I make a claim when we start our thing that
yeah.
if you don't take away one thing from this that you can implement into your business tomorrow, we need to I'll have a one-to-one with you for free,
Mm,
and see what went wrong. And um, I must start promoting the book, but it did go to bestseller in 4 countries in 12 categories. And I've written it
wow.
3 years ago, and I still haven't started promoting it yet because I didn't write it to, you know, to make money out of selling the copy. I wrote it to share
Mm,
some of my experience, if people could be bothered reading it. And it's not stuff that just got thrown at me or on a plate
mm,
and I listen to keynote speakers that are famous. I'm not a famous guy. In fact, most of the people watching this will have never heard of me before. But what I have done is actually do the do. And
mm,
and when I talk on stage, I can talk on many levels and on various aspects, from the heart and from experience. And what a lot of keynotes do, they might have a name because they're on television or they're a famous sports person
mm,
or whatnot, but they either don't share what was good, bad, and ugly, or they intentionally keep it, for people because they've got a coaching business or they've got something else that backs onto it and they use it as a leader so people come
yeah.
and crowd around and buy their course or something. And I don't have any courses, so I've got no motivation, other than to help businesses because it's a sad statistic that there's about
Yes.
5.5 million businesses in the UK today. Out of those, all but a couple of 100,000 are one-man bands. And for the DEI people out there, one-woman operations,
Mm,
however they identify operations, one-person operations. Um, as you guessed, I'm not a DEI advocate. I'm much more in always trying to favour the best person. I don't care what they
yes.
look like or how they act or whatever. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But and
That's,
those events, we speak, and I can do a impromptu event based on the profile of the audience. In fact, I sometimes ask, so what have we got
mm,
here? Are they got business owners today? And if there's a majority of business owner, I can focus that on 3 things that they can do today that cost them nothing or very little, that'll increase their business by 20, 30% if they follow the strategy. Now, not everybody does that, but at least hopefully they go away from one of those presentations knowing something that they didn't know before or get
mm.
reminded of something that they'd forgotten that they can implement without having to go and spend a fortune on consultants or coaches or anybody else that's leeching around looking for their money.
Absolutely. That's very honourable, isn't it, really, John? Because it comes from your heart, obviously. You like doing what you do. You like to go and do these wonderful speeches and talking to people, and educating people, and to actual change. Because to walk onto a stage without any real written script as such, and then to sort of focus on what the audience is, and then change your delivery based on the audience members. That's quite a skill, isn't it?
Well,
And you have to have the
if you've
knowledge.
done what I've done, then
Mm,
I'm not reciting stuff from a book. I'm not
mm,
reciting stuff from anything else other than from memory.
absolutely. And that's the best way, isn't it?
Well,
That works.
that's what
That
I look
works.
for. If I go to and listen to a speaker somewhere, I want to find out something new, not some. bollocks about how good they are or what they've done, or that doesn't
Exactly
impress me
right.
at all.
No, I can understand that too. I mean, so moving forward, I mean, what is next in the world of John Attridge? What's your future plans? I mean, you say you're going to potentially get out of BBX within 3 to 5 years. What are you thinking of next? Because from what I understand, with a lot of people I know that get to a certain age, they don't want to retire. They never want to retire. They want to carry on doing stuff and keep on. And why not? I mean, for example, I'll tell you a story. I know Barry Hearn here, who you've probably heard of Barry. He owns the match rooms. He owns snooker, darts. His son runs the boxing here in the UK and globally. And Barry Hearn is what now? When I last spoke to him a few years ago, he must be now 84, 85. And I spoke to Steve Davis, the 6 times world snooker champion, quite recently. And I said to Steve, I said, what is it with Barry? I said, he doesn't need any money. He's a multi-millionaire, probably more. I said, what's his motivation? He said, well, to be honest, Russell, he said, if he stopped today, he'd drop dead tomorrow. Now, I think that's the moment, that's the plan, isn't it? That's the momentum. And I think all of us that do what we do, we don't want to give up, do we? There's always
Well,
something new and exciting around the corner.
if you enjoy golf and you're
Yes.
still able to play it,
Yeah.
would you reach a certain age and retire?
Well, of course you wouldn't.
So I, my drug is business. I love
Mm.
being involved in it.
Yeah, it
It
is a
gets me
drug.
up every day at 5 a.m. and
It certainly does.
you know, um, and I look at people that are well older than me. I mean, Joe Foster. Nobody would have heard
Mm.
of Joe.
No, it's not a
Um,
name I conjure with.
so he opened up a little retail shoe shop in Bolton, right, and turned it into a company that you may have heard of called Reebok.
Yeah, oh, Reebok, global brand, massive brand.
So Joe sold Reebok in 1984 for $4
Mm.
billion US dollars.
Oh, I can imagine.
He's 90, just turned 90
Yeah.
last week. And I've been with him on stage, him
Yes.
and his wife, Julie, lovely people. They're
Oh, I can
always,
imagine.
they're always on a flight somewhere showing their Reeboks.
Yes.
And if I follow them on social media, I haven't caught up with them for a year or so. But Joe's 90. What does he
Mm.
enjoy doing more than anything else in the world, do you think?
Yeah, exactly.
He loves being on stage.
That's a buzz, isn't it?
He wrote his book called The Shoeman, and he knows what that is because that's his life story in essence.
Mm.
You just you keep him on track, and he can be so entertaining, reciting information that how do you start a retail shop well, he was third generation, but how do you
Yes.
become a third generation retail shop in Bolton and turn it into Reebok? How do you do that?
Yeah,
Now,
it's unimaginable, isn't it? But he did it. He was successful, and
and it's a
and
great
I
story, and he continues
oh,
to this
huge.
day. Last week, I saw him on a stage. Well, I didn't. I saw the social media in Dubai talking to a group of business people.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. But I share his passion about being on the stage because I'm similar. Put me in front of a camera, give me a microphone, and I'm in my own element. I'm away. Put me on the stage, just like yourself, John. It doesn't matter how big or small the audience is. I'm in my own element, and that also is a drug. It really is.
And one other thing I'd say at the top of all this, that money has never been a motivator for me.
Mm,
So I'm not a billionaire, far from it. But I've
yeah.
never had to worry about money since I was 19 and started earning decent money with MLC. Um,
Yes.
I haven't got 1,000 houses around the world or not any of
Mm,
that sort of stuff, but I've never, ever been short of money.
no,
So,
you live a nice
and
life.
a good old mate of mine once said, if you ever get in trouble in business and you're good at sales, you can sell your way out of trouble.
Yeah.
And that served me in good stead over the years. But the point being is that I never do anything for money. I
Mm.
always do stuff because I love doing it. I enjoy doing it. I'm fairly decent at what I do.
Oh,
And
you're good.
money just drops in from all sorts of weird and wonderful places. So
Yeah.
I come across people that are just focused on money. And to me, if it works for them, brilliant. But
Yeah.
that's not how I operate my life. I go to sleep at night. I never have a worry. I've got a philosophy that I employ that
Mm,
says, have I got an issue? And if the answer is yes, can I deal with it? What's the solution? And if I can't
mm,
find one, I don't worry about it. So
exactly.
you know, if I can't influence the outcome, well, what the hell is the point in worrying about it? And so that's just some philosophies on life.
Oh, well, I think that's true as well. I mean, I know, knowing you as I do believe that too. I mean, you do have a great culture for wishing to help. As we know, we're sort of working together partly now at the moment on various other business interests. So that's fantastic too, and I'm sure that will become successful over a period. And absolutely right too, and that's
And
helping
you know,
companies.
I interviewed on my Quantum Leap business show during COVID, which is another little
Mm.
story. Ivan
Oh, great
Meisner,
story!
the founder of BNI.
Wow.
You know, and I had Ivan on the show, and the first question I asked, "So, Ivan, what have you been doing lately?" He said, "Oh, I just flew back from Necker Island." And I said, "Oh, what have you been doing there?" And he said, "I'm talking to Richard Branson about having the first networking event in space." And I said, "Oh, as you do."
As you do,
So
just drop it in.
you run across interesting people,
You do.
but without money as the motivator, the thing that I've found with people that do
Mm.
have money is that generally speaking, and I'm generalizing,
Mm.
money isn't their motivator. They just don't do it just to read the value of their bank account. There's always
Mm.
another emotional motivation behind the
Yeah.
scenes somewhere, whether it's ego, whether it's recognition. But
Mm.
generally speaking, people with a lot of money, you get your odd person that is obviously just money's everything, but
Yeah, of
and
course.
usually they're the people that you have one conversation with, and you think, where's a place in the room I can get away from them. But the really interesting people, and I'm sure you met
Yes.
people like that in sport and business.
Oh,
You
you
know,
do.
they want to share. They are genuinely interesting. Some are funny.
Yes.
Um, and
Well, they all have a story to tell, don't they? I mean, I meet many, many have been on my show. They all have a story to tell, which is fantastic. Absolutely amazing. I mean, I had Jimmy Cricket, a British comedian, on my show last year. You might have heard of Jimmy Cricket. I mean, he's in his late 80s now. He's still working. He's still up and down doing the theatres because he loves it so much.
yeah,
And it was such a great show. We were just laughing all the way through. It was just a wonderful, wonderful show to get out there. And he loved it so much he put it onto his website. So that's a good story, isn't it? And
well,
love it. Love
yeah,
meeting people like that.
you know, there's a few cricket tours running around. Lashings is one that
Mm,
I've worked with in
mm,
the past. Some good guys there, and
yes.
Blowers turns up. You must know him. And some
Yes.
of the speeches he comes out with, he must be nearly 90, and
Yeah.
you think, man, what an interesting and colourful career and life that he's led, and he's still going strong, well
Yeah.
into the autumn years.
Absolutely. Long may it continue as well. I mean, it's
Yep.
just an interesting fact of life, isn't it? And a lot of it is because they haven't given up. They've not retired. They've kept going. It
And as I say,
inspires
that
you.
how many times do you see someone, they've worked for 50 years, they
Mm,
retire and they're drop dead, 12 months later? Because,
exactly. It happens quite regularly. 6 months to 12 months happens to a lot of
yeah,
people.
so
Not for me. No,
no.
no, 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 no. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And anyway, I'm conscious of time. I know you've got other stuff to do, John. So we're just over the hour. So what I'll do is I'll just do what I always do towards the end, and wrap up a little bit, if you don't mind. And of course, please stay on when I finish because we'll have a quick chat afterwards, very briefly. But as always, on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show, we could talk forever, John, and I'll tell you we could, about your life in business as a business leader, motivational speaker, and cricket player, and umpire, of course. It's been a huge pleasure as always, and as always, the pleasure is all mine, and of course the show's audience when this podcast is released on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show and the Lord Russell Baker YouTube channel. So thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you the quite incredible John Attridge, and I'm clapping my hands here and with joy. It's been fantastic. So please stay on. The next episode on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show is a tribute to Ray Wilkins, where my special guest will be Ross Wilkins, who is the son of Ray Wilkins. Ray, of course, is a truly celebrated football player and gentleman, playing for Chelsea, Manchester United, AC Milan, Queen's Park Rangers, and indeed Rangers in Scotland too. And of course, the England national team with 84 caps, playing at UEFA Euro 1990 and the 1982 and 1986 FIFA World Cups. So a great show to look forward to for all football fanatics alike, and of course exclusive on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the inside. So until then, it's au revoir from him and au revoir from me.